Well, Black Monday is always a tough day for coaches around the league, and we're going to talk about four coaches who had a really difficult day today. Probably heard about it yesterday. They have been fired. That's Lou Anarumo, Frank Pollock, James Betcher, and Maryan Hobby. We will talk so much more about that. We're going to talk about the failure this year for the Cincinnati Bengals, where they go from here, who they should keep going forward into 2025, where they should focus their attention on the draft. We are just going to jump into a lot of that right now because essentially this is the episode that just kind of ties in the loose ends of the regular season. So we will talk a lot more about that. And I have some good questions for you that I would really love answers to. So hit me in the comments after you hear the question. Let me know your opinion because I would love to hear them. All right, you are watching Deep in the Stripes. This is the sickest Bengals podcast around, and I am your host, Elise Jesse.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way!
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Okay, so I'm going to be totally honest. The Lou Anarumo firing was expected. It almost seemed like it was inevitable with the way that this defense was trending last year and in 2024. In 2023, they gave up the most explosive plays in the league, and they were constantly in the offseason and training camp. We were all talking about not giving up explosive plays and being one of those teams that is able to shut down the opposing offense and have a handle on that, knowing that Joe Burrow would be on the other side with the ball in his hands, knowing that an offense like this, now nobody knew, I don't think, except for the players themselves, how good and how explosive of an offense that we would see from the Bengals in 2024. I think the majority of that, not doubt, but just uncertainty with the Cincinnati Bengals offense was the fact that Joe Burrow was coming off of that ligament injury. So no one was really positive about how he would come back from that, but clearly he had of his best seasons of his NFL career, the best season of his NFL career. And I think that the fact that he is still, Saturday, he said that he was breaking up the cartilage and he just got better as the year progressed. I don't even think that he has reached his ceiling yet, to be honest with you. Now, Cincinnati's defense, let's look at these stats because these numbers are ridiculous. Points per drive. Bengals in 2023 ranked 25th in the league. No, not acceptable. This year, they ranked even lower, 26th. Success rate, 26. EPA per play, 25th in 2023 and 29th this season. Touchdown percentage, 21st in 2023 and 29th this season. Red zone defense, 30th. That is a deep fall from 11th in 2023. So this defense just did not live up to any expectations. Zach Taylor saying that he had higher expectations. Obviously, I know that, any head coach having to let position coaches and defensive coordinators go is really difficult for them because Lou Anarumo was one of Zach Taylor's first hires. I don't know if you remember or not, longtime fans, if you remember, when Zach Taylor was hired, one of his first hires went to Lou Anarumo, and Zach Taylor was hired so late because he was coaching for the Rams. So he was a really, really late hire for the Cincinnati Bengals. So as far as like putting together a staff, I feel like Zach Taylor had a difficult job ahead of him in 2019 because a lot of those good position coaches and good defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators were already taken by other teams. So Lou Anarumo comes in, and the majority of people were like, "What? Who? What are you talking about? Who's this guy coming in?" And then that was obviously overshadowed by offensive line coach Turner, who came in, who had just a plethora of issues. Even before he was hired by the Cincinnati Bengals, he was fired a year or two later and then rehired. The Bengals rehired Frank Pollock. And I thought that move was I guess kind of expected considering the fact that Joe Burrow has been hit so many times. He's constantly running for his life. Now, part of that is the fact that Joe Burrow does like to have a 5 receiver set. He likes to have as many options as possible. So you have less bodies available in protection. But it's just, I know that there were injuries to the offensive line. I thought Cody Ford stepped up and played at multiple positions, and I think Cody Ford exceeded expectations. Mims with that hand injury, Orlando Brown playing on a broken leg. I mean, some of that stuff Frank Pollock could not help. But I think as far as Zach Taylor was saying, he was just saying like it just wasn't the right fit. And that makes sense. I think that for Zach Taylor, once you have been a head coach for numerous years, this was his 6th year, you have more of a sense, more of a feel of what kind of coach works best within your system, within what you want to run. So I have higher expectations for the next hires at the offensive line position, at the defensive coordinator position, the linebacker position, and the defensive line position, because I feel like Zach Taylor does have more of a handle on what he expects and what he needs and what his lists are for what he wants to see in a guy who is going to be coaching in those positions. So I would expect a lot more going forward. Talking about the defense a little bit more. I mean, I want you to know, this is my first big question for you guys. To see the year that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and even Chase Brown, T. Higgins had this season, and to watch them be ahead and to watch this team score oftentimes more than 30 points and still lose games. Which game was the most disappointing to you? At first, for the majority of the season, for me, it was the New England game, because not only did the offense underperform, in my opinion, but the defense just looked flat that entire game, week 1 of the season. And I was just like, really? This is what we waited months to see? This is a crap product. I'm pretty sure I called it a trash product after that game. I get a little too honest sometimes. That's just how I roll. But what the heck did I just watch? That was a waste of my time. I was actually pissed after watching that game, because I was like, what a waste of everybody's time. That's a joke. But then the New England game was superseded by Cincinnati's second game with the Baltimore Ravens. Cincinnati was up at one point 21-7 on the Baltimore Ravens. And what does the defense do? They allow Baltimore to score touchdowns on 4 straight possessions, and they ultimately lose the game. It was mind-boggling. And I think that game is one of the reasons why Lou Anarumo is no longer coaching for the Cincinnati Bengals. That game was it's unacceptable. We've heard that word a lot in 2024. It's just when you have an MVP caliber quarterback and you have a receiver that has just won the Triple Crown, giving up as many points and losing as many games as Cincinnati's defense did this season is a joke. It's unacceptable. It is just, it's crap. It is. It's a waste. One of the most historic seasons in Cincinnati's offensive history, and it was squandered. They end 9-8. They had that 5-game win streak, that surge. I think that has a little bit more to do with who they were playing. Obviously, they beat the Broncos, which they're in the playoffs. They beat the Steelers, which, in my opinion, when you're talking about the Bengals and the Steelers, I was expecting the Bengals to win that game because of this fact. The Steelers already knew that they were playing in the playoffs. It's either the 5-6 seed or the 6 seed. And I think for them, something that's more important than seeding is making sure that you have all of your interesting play call options in your arsenal for the playoffs when these games matter. So I wasn't expecting the Steelers to look great on Saturday night. I wasn't expecting the Steelers to run anything that maybe they would want to run in the playoffs when the game actually really mattered to them. I don't think Saturday's game mattered all that much to the Steelers, and the Bengals barely won it. So to me, okay, so the other 3 teams losing records. the Steelers count as beating a team with a winning record, but at the same time, I don't think that Mike Tomlin was going to give up anything revealing going into the playoffs. I think that's what they were mainly focused on, in my opinion. So, man, the confusing fire for me, though, was Maryan Hobby. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson, 17 sacks. Like, he's a monster. We all know that. That is well known. Didn't see as much production from Sam Hubbard, obviously, but Joseph Ossai, I felt like he was playing a lot better. Like, he was playing to what we were kind of expecting to see earlier in this season. You expect to see him develop a lot more, but I think it's weird that in the first 6 years of Zach Taylor's head coaching career, first they fired Nick Eason, and then it was DJ Reader who actually wanted Maryan Hobby as a defensive line coach. So when they brought in DJ Reader, Reader was a big proponent for Maryan Hobby. So they bring in Hobby, had some success. The players really love Hobby. So that was kind of confusing to me, but I think that a lot of that has to do with development of, I think, Myles Murphy. Chris Jenkins was pretty good, I think. He was doing pretty well. He was trending pretty well towards the end of the season. But I think a lot of that has to probably do with development. So it'll be interesting to see who they are able to bring in and kind of fill those roles. Let's talk about Jamar Chase for a second. The Triple Crown winner. Sammy has made me a graphic. Thank you, Sammy, for making this for me. Look at that. 127 catches, over 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Let's go back to the thing that is driving me bonkers with Jamar Chase, and that is the fact that they did not get a deal done before the season started. How could you? What a mistake. It's going to cost you so much more money. And I've said it before, it's not a secret. I don't think anybody knew outside of Jamar Chase. Jamar's funny because there have been numerous times, like in the offseason, where I've asked him like what his goals are, and he will never reveal his goals. I think because if he doesn't reach his goals, he doesn't want to be reminded that he didn't attain them. So he usually keeps his goals close to the vest. I would not be surprised if like the top priority on his goals was to be a Triple Crown winner in 2024, which he turned out to be. He's going to cost a lot of money. He's going to cost close to quarterback money because that's just how good he is. He's definitely going to have to make a lot more money than Justin Jefferson at, what is he, $34 million a year or $35 million a year? He's going to cost more than CeeDee Lamb, who is right at the $34-35 million too. He's going to cost a lot more. So for the next 4 years, you've got to figure out a way to afford Joe Burrow, which I believe he is due $45 million next season. It's all about guaranteed money as well for Jamar Chase. Also extending T. Higgins. He's going to be expensive. Also, he is the top free agent in 2025. So to think that T. Higgins, even though he fired his agent, David Mulgeta, and then hired Jamar Chase's agent, every team is going to be trying to court T. Higgins. They are. They would love to see T. Higgins as wide receiver number 1 for their quarterback. T. Higgins, the way his hands, his grip on the ball, just his strength when he gets hit, he does not let go of that ball very often. He's going to be expensive too. So what I expect to see from the Cincinnati Bengals is for them to pour money into Jamar Chase and T. Higgins Cup. Make it overflow with money for those 2 wide receivers. You know what else I would like to see for the Cincinnati offense is I would like to see them entertain or maybe bring in for a workout just to see if he fits, just to see if they like him. A name that longtime Bengals fans will remember, Kevin Zeitler. Come on, man. I know that the Bengals don't like to bring in players who seem up there in age, but Kevin Zeitler has not fallen off. He's playing for the Detroit Lions. They're a 1 seed. He is a big reason for that. He is not dropped off. Bring him in. He is a free agent in 2025. I will bang the drum for Kevin Zeitler, mainly because of his talent and because of his experience. And I kind of feel like for the younger offense, he would be a good voice. Like he's just like a down-to-earth, solid personality, like a solid character. And I think that he would be the voice that a lot of younger guys could learn from going forward, which would make this offensive line quite better. I think for the draft for the Cincinnati Bengals, they absolutely must focus heavily on defense. Like they absolutely need to. I want to see them draft a safety, a linebacker, a D tackle, and an edge rusher. Let's see it all. Pour your money, your monetary resources into your top playmakers, which they already have committed to Joe Burrow. Commit to Jamar Chase. Commit to T. Higgins. And then draft great defensive players. And you can pay them money that you can afford to pay them until their contracts come up. That is how you win in 2025, in my opinion. That is how you make the playoffs in 2025. Joe Burrow, after their game on Saturday, said that not making the playoffs would be a failure. In my opinion, I'm going to take it one step further. If in 2025 this team starts 0-2, 0-3, consider that a failure. That is a failure for this team, for this franchise, for everybody involved. Because these slow starts continue to bite them in the behind year after year after year. They're constantly clawing and trying to scrape out of the mess that they've made for themselves. Wouldn't it be nice to just 1 year have them start fast? Have them not be talked about as a potential team that is going to be eliminated from the playoffs by halfway through the season? And then have to see the Bengals like the same old tired storyline. Oh my gosh, of all these years. The Bengals with their backs against the wall. The Bengals with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, the chip should be pretty dang big. It should be that you start slow every single season. I don't know. And I feel like I'm going to get some comments from people about like not having the starters play very much in the preseason games. That might have a little bit to do with it. But I also think that overall preparation for these guys is a big thing going into game 1, 2, and 3 of the season each and every year. I don't know why they start so slow. I don't think it has everything to do with like Joe Burrow not playing 10 more preseason snaps. I think it's a team being prepared or not. I think that's the issue. And if they can correct that, I think that they will be in a much better position. They're not going to be fighting at the end of every season and relying on other teams to help them into the playoffs. If you thought that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to go in and play this insane game against the Denver Broncos, who are also trying to make the playoffs for the first time in 50 years? If you thought the Chiefs were going to go in and manhandle the Broncos, you were out of your mind. The fact that the Bengals were in a position where they had a top-performing quarterback receiver duo, and they still needed to cross their fingers, say their prayers that other teams would lose to get into the play. That's not the position that you want to be in when you have the talent that you do on your roster. That's why it's unacceptable. Zach Taylor did address the media this afternoon. He said that he's going to make sure that this kind of season does not happen again. We'll see. Hopefully not. I mean, I would like for the Cincinnati Bengals to have another playoff run. Wouldn't that be fun? Because, again, we've spoken about this before. That is the expectation now. Playoffs are bust, and it's not just make the playoffs, make the first round. It is go deep into the playoffs, compete for an AFC championship, and make it to the Super Bowl. Those are the expectations. Those always those haven't always been the expectations. Like since I've been covering the team, which I started in 2013, for a long time, the expectation was just win one playoff game. Get over the hump of winning one playoff game because nobody had seen it in 30 years. Now it's like, playoff game? Win the AFC Championship. Go win the Super Bowl. Just waiting to see it. Patiently waiting to see it. I would like to know from you, who would be your top candidate? And that's my final question for you guys. I love hearing your opinions and I love hearing like why you think certain things. So if you have a defensive coordinator in mind that you think would fit really, really well in this scheme, let me know. Who you think that is in the comments. I've heard great things about Robert Saleh. I wonder if he would be a good fit. I'm not sure if maybe the way that he approaches, the way he coaches would be a fit. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure how that would join, marry, or clash with the way Zach Taylor is. Obviously, they are going to have a slew of coaches aiming to be hired by the Cincinnati Bengals who wouldn't want to coach on a team, even if you're coaching a defensive position, coaching on a team that has Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on it. Like the way that the NFL was just entranced by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, those two players keep your team relevant. So I feel like anybody would love to coach for the Cincinnati Bengals at this point, and that hasn't always been the case. It has not. Before the Joe Burrow era, that was not always the case. So I think it'll be interesting who they bring in. And again, I have more confidence in Zach Taylor choosing who he wants in those positions now than I did in 2019 before he had any experience as a head coach. I don't even know if he knew like what he would want in a coach at every single position. I think that I would expect him at least to have more of an idea now. So yeah. He also, Paul Dehner Jr. asked a great question in Bengals media. That's my last point that I want to talk to you about, because he was kind of asking Zach Taylor, I just called him Zeitler, how he evaluates his own performance as a head coach this season. And Zach said he's going to look over lost games and do a better job of taking control of those games. I think he's mainly going to look at those games where the Cincinnati Bengals lost by one score. That was a lot. Was it 10, 11 games? Like, that's a lot of games. This was the most dramatic year. Truly, like outside of like injuries and stuff, like outside of the year, Joe Burrow's first year where he had the gruesome ACL injury. That was a dramatic season. I thought this has been one of the most dramatic seasons in recent memory for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, it was always down to the wire. Constant blown leads where you thought that the team had it put away and they were just unable to close it out. And just the disappointing record at home. There's just, even though Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow were fun to watch, I personally would love to forget about this year, because there were so many games where I was like, did I just waste 4 hours of my time watching this? Like, what is this product? I'm so tired of this. It's almost like the Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, no matter how much they tried, could not make up for the disappointment on defense week in and week out. So yeah, this would be a year that I would like to forget about. Let me know if you would also like to forget about it, or if you would take a year like this and then I guess try to better yourself, reflect on it, and try to do things a little bit better. Me, goodbye 2024. Goodbye. On to 2025. The number one priority, in my opinion, is to sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Those two. Get that done. That's the number one thing on the priority list, in my opinion. We will be talking to you again. Obviously, this is a very, very busy time. Even though the season has ended, it's just a busy time in the NFL, with potential coaching positions open, new candidates coming in, trying to beef up certain positions, trying to figure out who is the best guy to draft. There's just a lot going on. So we will keep you updated. As always, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you being here because I know that you could be anywhere else. I'll talk to you soon.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.